if I was voting on that, I would not be in support of that. When I ran for office, I have to tell you, I wasn't even sure what the salary was.
Hi there, it's WAMC News Director Ian Pickus. And on this episode of the WAMC News Podcast, we speak with New York State Senator-elect Rob Rolison, the outgoing Republican mayor of Poughkeepsie. Well, Rolison is wrapping up his tenure as mayor, but he's staying in public office in the new year. After 2 terms, the Republican won November's election to represent the new 39th district in the New York State Senate. Public safety was a key campaign issue for the veteran of the Poughkeepsie Police. I spoke with Rolison during his final days as mayor. How does it work transitioning from the role as an executive to a state senator?
Well, it's interesting, and that's a really great way to start the conversation. I had to transition from the legislative branch of the county legislature for 12 and a half years to the executive branch of the city of Poughkeepsie. And I've had these conversations with both sides saying, I know what it's like to have to take a vote. Now I know what it's like to be what you would call the chief executive and not having to vote. Now going to Albany and being back in the legislative branch. And I think what is good for me is that I have experienced both. I have obviously a healthy respect and admiration for both sides of government, and been very, very lucky and blessed to have been able to participate in both.
Okay, well, tell us the truth. Which is harder?
It's a great question. I think depending on the topic, right? But I would say, for me, and being, just the experience of being mayor and having the responsibility to 30,000 plus people. People look to their mayors and their chief executives for guidance, for action, to do something, and most importantly, to be present within that community. And that's something that has always been one of my top priorities. I don't sometimes like to use that word priority, is to be present. So people know who, and I think people knew and do know who their mayor is here in Poughkeepsie.
Your father was a New York State senator. Was it a dream of yours to follow in his footsteps? How did you get to this point in your public career?
Well, and thank you for that, because my dad was a wonderful father. I had a great mom and dad, and a great sister, and I still have a great sister. My dad started as an elected official in 1967. I think he was 37 years old when he was elected to the state Senate. That was his first position as an elected official. He was active in the Republican Party, both in the town of Poughkeepsie, and then he was the county chairman. And then position became available and said, "Jay, you got to run." And at first he didn't want to. And he did, and he held that position in the state legislature for 24 years. As a kid, knowing, he was in Albany and going to Albany with my mom and sis quite often to see him at the legislature, and then we would go up every year at the end of the session and come back with him, and it was really a great experience. But I always wanted to be a cop and a fireman, and I did both. And it wasn't until probably, the first, say, 7 or 8 years of my career as a police officer, I became involved with the police union. I was PBA president for two 5-year stints, dealing with elected officials, on the town board and other levels of government. And I really enjoyed it. But never really thinking that far ahead that I would become a state senator, or let me even back up, that I would ever be mayor of the city of Poughkeepsie, right? I mean, those were not things that I was necessarily aspiring to. But I got involved with the county legislature in 2003. I had the opportunity, which was a gift, to get appointed to the legislature in the District 8, where I lived, and which represented a part of the city of Poughkeepsie and eventually the town of Poughkeepsie, because there was a vacancy. And I held that position for the last 6 months of 2003. And then that November, I ran for a 2-year term. I don't think that probably would have happened then if I hadn't had the opportunity to get appointed because of the vacancy. And so that started, my career, so to speak, or my time, I should say, better said, my time as an elected official. And that's what, just kind of propelled me because I really enjoyed it. And of course, I still enjoy it.
Before I ask you about some New York State politics stuff, let me focus on the city for a minute. You have gotten a budget approved here in the waning days of your tenure as mayor. What's in store for residents for the next fiscal year?
Well, we're staying the course fiscally. We're under the tax cap again. We were able to drop tax rates. So we're doing the things we've been doing. Especially being under the cap, providing essential services, enhancing services as well. We've been very fortunate to have ARPA funding from the federal government, which has really helped us make commitments in infrastructure, and I use the parks as a great example, to make these key infrastructure improvements. That's going to continue with ARPA money and other city monies, and to make sure that the city continues to improve and improve fiscally. And so, I think that for me, for the council, there were some amendments made by the council to the budget that didn't increase spending. It just moved some money around from different lines, which we're obviously fine with. That this budget will serve our community well. It continues a path forward. And as we, see these additional improvements within the city and the continued development and big infrastructure improvements outside of the budget, that's more capital. That we're continuing, of course, to head in the right direction. And I really appreciate the council approving the budget unanimously the other night.
So what kind of advice, what kind of guidance are you giving to Mark Nelson, who has been a veteran of your administration, now will become the acting mayor?
Yeah, and I have to tell you, Mark is a dear friend, and he is absolutely qualified to take that position. He has been involved in, which is really good for him and been good for the city. He came in as finance commissioner. We recruited nationally for a finance commissioner and a city administrator in 2016. Mark came in as a finance commissioner because of his finance background in the city of Hartford. And then when the city administrator that we brought in from Ohio, she left to go to the village of Ossining, it was an easy ask of Mark to be the city administrator because he is such a hands-on person. And so now he has the responsibility and the honor to be the mayor. I mean, and it's not an acting mayor. He is the mayor. He's getting sworn in as mayor on January 3rd. And I've asked people, and I don't think everybody probably doesn't know this, and I talked to the council about this the other night. He doesn't get it city administrator. I've been lucky because I had Mark Nelson, and he's going to be the mayor, and he's going to be doing essentially both roles. Right now, we have two full-time people, a full-time mayor and a full-time city administrator, to help work with this city government and the city. And so he has an increased task given to him by just the nature of the way that the charter is. But I have absolute confidence because everybody else is here. There is a team of people in the administration and the 350-plus city employees who go to work every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who are out there doing great work for this city. And they now know that I'm going to be leaving. I will not be mayor as of January 3rd when Mark gets sworn in, and then I get sworn into the state Senate on January 4th, that they've got someone, they've got continuity, and they know Mark. And that's the other thing. And it's not like, our employees and members of the community don't know who he is and what he's done. He has been as much a part of this city turning around as I have been.
So your new district, the 39th New York State Senate District, obviously the tortured redistricting process of the past year is behind us. But for people who may now be represented by you for the first time, remind listeners where the district is, what communities it covers, and how you're getting to know it.
Well, it's a 3-county district, and in Dutchess County, it's the city of Poughkeepsie, it's the town of Poughkeepsie, it's the town of LaGrange, it's the town of Wappinger, which has the village of Wappingers in it. It's the town of Fishkill, which has the village of Fishkill in it. It is the town of East Fishkill. It is the town of Beekman. It is the town of Pauling, which has the village of Pauling. It has the city of Beacon. And then you go into Putnam County, the town of Putnam Valley, and then you have the town of Phillipstown, which is the village of Nelsonville and the village of Cold Spring. And then you jump across the river, and you have the city of Newburgh, the town of Newburgh, the town of Montgomery, which has the village of Maybrook, the village of Montgomery, and the village of Walden.
Sounds like a lot.
It is. But, the good thing is that all the parts of the district are really accessible. And, you've got major thoroughfares, you've got country roads, you've got state highways, and I have enjoyed being out of the 4 square miles of the city of Poughkeepsie, because when I was the mayor, I didn't have to worry about that. My focus always was, and it still will be, of course, as part of the district, the city of Poughkeepsie. I didn't have to worry about going all over the place. As when I was in the legislature and the chairman of the legislature, I did a lot of traveling throughout the county, especially after I became the chair of the legislature. But campaigning for a little over 5 months, I was everywhere, and I enjoyed every minute of it, because I went to places that I'd been before. I went to places I have never been, and I can tell you the reception of people that I knew, people that I didn't know, people of every political persuasion, was just a very, very enlightening, humbling experience to be able to say, I want to represent you in the state capitol. And I think for me, the good thing for me is having the experience that I've had, starting in public safety, becoming a county legislator, being the chair of the legislature, but being the mayor of this city, the diverse city that it is, with everything that can happen in a big city, but a small city challenge, right? And so that will work very well for me in Albany, because I've experienced so much because of the nature of what I've been able to do before becoming a state senator.
How do you feel about making $142,000 a year as a New York State senator?
Well, this is something that I kind of came out of nowhere. That's for this session to decide. But if I was voting on that, I would not be in support of that. When I ran for office, I have to tell you, I wasn't even sure what the salary was, because there were numbers that were, being talked about, and I wasn't focused on that. But I would not be supporting that.
Do you object to the idea of a pay raise? Do you object to limits on outside income? Specifically, how come?
Well, one of the things which I think, and I haven't seen this in any of the discussions, but when this is broader than just the number. If you're saying to people that you can have outside income, or there's a limit on outside income, how does that impact who actually will run for that office? There is this term, like a citizen legislature, a body of citizens that are elected representatives. If you start to limit the ability for individuals, because this, even though it's a full-time responsibility, and that's how I'm going to treat this office. Not everybody that is there now, or people who may consider running in the future, want to just have that as their, say, sole income. It's like, I'm going to work for the state. Well, what about if you're a business person? What about, if you have, a career? I think that limits the people that would even consider running for public office. And I think that that's a major consideration when you talk about, raising the salary and then saying you can't do this, you can't, make this certain amount, of money. I think it could obviously limit the pool of potential candidates, and that's not what you want. You don't want it to be one particular type of individual or individuals. These are citizens that come from throughout the state. New York is a huge state, so while there may be people that say, yeah, I could do that. That could be my sole job. I don't really want to do anything on the outside. What about the people that aren't able to say that and want to have a business? And this gets very complicated on that end of it.
But given all of the cases of, high-profile corruption tied to lawmakers' outside activities, I mean, do you give any credence to the argument that outside income can be corruptive for people who should be putting the state's interest number one?
Well, I think if you probably look at it in totality, that's not the case. And of course, and I understand that, and they should be, they are high profile because of the office. But at the same time, we can't lump, everybody together. I think there's 213 total legislators between the Assembly and the Senate. I think that if that was the sole reason, that's unfair. People who do bad things can do bad things, whether if we look specifically here at an elected body, whether they're full-time legislators or they're legislators that have the ability to have outside income. And they need to know if they do that and get jammed up, they need to be held accountable. But I don't think you can paint with the broad brush. I don't think that's fair.
So what would you say will be your top priority? You'll be going into a minority conference in Albany. What do you plan to focus on as a state senator?
Well, I think, for me, being who I am, having integrity, people know that I think they can trust me, that I always come from a place that I think is a good place. It doesn't mean that I always have the right answer or the best idea, but I always approach things on how we can make things better. This is what I've done in my career, starting out at 18 as a firefighter and then a cop and then a legislator and a mayor. Public safety, of course, is my background. It's an area that I really want to focus on in the state capitol. And I'm looking forward to that opportunity because if communities or a state, people don't feel safe, and we see that is still a top priority of people who have been spoken to about their feelings. And the economy, of course. I don't want to get too far out of a lane that I know about. And I say that because I want to make a difference where I can be extremely helpful. But I also want to learn. I want to learn about the other things that make a great state to live in. What are the impediments? What are the good things? How do we expand on both? And also, what we've done here to help children. And I think there'll be plenty of opportunities to do that, whether you're in the minority or the majority, but also just being very respectful of the office.
What kind of relationship do you have with the Senate leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, with the governor, Governor Hochul?
Well, I have met the majority leader just, I think, one time when I attended a State of the State by then Governor Cuomo, and I look forward. I look forward to meeting her in now my capacity, and she is the leader of the Senate. I have a respect for that. My dad was the assistant majority leader of the state Senate when he retired in 1990. And I know the responsibility, the awesome responsibility that she has as the majority leader. I've met the governor on several times here when she was in the city of Poughkeepsie and in Dutchess County, and someone who came from local government like she did and has an understanding of that. I look forward to working with her and her staff on being able to help the 39th district, which obviously is my first priority, but the overall well-being of the state.
So you mentioned earlier, of course, you're keeping Poughkeepsie in your district. You'll still represent people who live there. But as mayor, is there anything that you weren't able to get done over the 2 terms that you're leaving as sort of unfinished business here as you look back?
Well, I think we say it's a great question. It's also a tough question because I have been trying to memorialize and with other staff members, on the things that we've done, right? And it's a lot. I mean, I've got like 6 or 7 pages of notes of different things that we've been able to accomplish together. And I think, to keep that forward momentum, I wish that we were able to reduce that final $2.8 million out of that $13.2 million deficit I inherited in 2016. I'm confident that Mayor Nelson and the Finance Commissioner and other stakeholders will be able to do that. That was our goal, to have that done, to get that down to zero and maybe even establish a fund balance when I left next year, but I'm leaving early. So I couldn't expect it to do that. That wasn't part of the incremental way of getting that deficit down. But I just think that, continuing to invest in the future, and obviously that's our children. I'm very excited for, the new Youth Opportunity Union building at the former YMCA site. We said early on in 2015 when I was running for office, I said this, that, that was going to be something that I wanted to see happen, and I'm glad with the partnership with the county that will happen. So I'm looking forward, but at the same time trying to reflect. And I think the good thing is that I still will be able to be helpful to this community and to every community within the district by, being a state senator that will be someone that always cares about people and communities and will be a resource whenever needed.
That's New York State Senator-elect and the outgoing mayor of Poughkeepsie, Rob Rolison, a Republican who will represent the new 39th district in the new New York State legislative session. Mayor, Senator-elect, thank you very much for taking all of the time to speak with us.
Yeah, it really was great, Ian, and I look forward to speaking to you and your colleagues, at WAMC when I get to the Capitol, getting sworn in on the 4th, and then the following Monday, the session starts, and then the work really starts to happen. I'm looking forward to it. I'm honored and very lucky to have this opportunity to be a New York State Senator.
All right, that does it for this episode of the WAMC News Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Ian Pickus.